A major part of director Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer was the security clearance trial of J. Robert Oppenheimer, but it wasn't entirely clear why he was on trial. Oppenheimer is a deep dive into the most important parts of J. Robert Oppenheimer's life, from detailing his work on the Manhattan Project to examining the moral implications of inventing the world's first nuclear weapon. To accomplish the latter, Nolan used a pivotal moment in Oppenheimer's life, his security clearance trial. That sequence scrutinized Robert's role in the Manhattan Project and his guilt after World War II, but it was easy to miss why the trial happened at all. Robert's security clearance trial served as a way to bring the characters of Oppenheimer, and many different figures from his life, together again in the film's final minutes. The timeline of Oppenheimer, however, made that sequence a bit confusing. Since it spliced together moments from both Lewis Strauss' nomination to the U.S. Cabinet in 1959 and Oppenheimer's trial in 1954, the final moments of the movie were often disorienting. It was often hard to tell when things happened and what caused them, and that confusion certainly extended to the reason for Oppenheimer's security clearance trial. Oppenheimer had a security clearance trial due to accusations of communist sympathies. Early on in Oppenheimer, a scene showed Robert conversing with members of the Communist Party, one of whom convinced him to send money to Spain via communist channels. Oppenheimer also began an intimate relationship with Jean Tatlock, who was a communist. On top of that, Oppenheimer was a very vocal liberal for much of his life, and while he wasn't an official member of the Communist Party, he did openly sympathize with the party and some of their ideology. That was controversial even before the Manhattan Project, but by the time of his security trial, Oppenheimer's ties to the Communist Party were downright scandalous. Oppenheimer's security trial took place in 1954, via Encyclopedia Britannica, and by that point in American history, the Red Scare and the era of McCarthyism were well underway. Much of the nation was deeply paranoid about the rising power of the Soviet Union and communism after World War II. Anyone who was even remotely close to being a communist or communist sympathizer was considered a threat to national security. Since Oppenheimer had long history with the Communist Party, and since he had such a prominent position as part of the Atomic Energy Commission, AEC, the government suspended Oppenheimer's security clearance, and Robert requested a hearing. Lewis Strauss, the chairperson of the AEC, also partially caused Oppenheimer's trial. Strauss had a few reasons to hate Oppenheimer, but it was mostly due to the fact that Robert had insulted him in public and, Strauss falsely believed, in private to Albert Einstein. To make sure that the government's trial resulted in a massive blow to Oppenheimer's career, Strauss made several moves. He convinced several people that Oppenheimer was a security risk, via Atomic Heritage Foundation. Strauss also convinced the FBI to surveil Robert and use their recordings against him, and he appointed Roger Robb as the trial's prosecuting attorney, ensuring that Oppenheimer wouldn't get an impartial hearing. Oppenheimer was also charged with opposing the hydrogen bomb and lobbying against President Truman's commission. J. Robert Oppenheimer during a security hearing. Oppenheimer's communist ties were a big reason for the security hearing, but an equally important factor was his open opposition to the hydrogen bomb. After President Truman dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Robert became deeply guilty of his role in the Manhattan Project, and he also became fiercely opposed to advancing the technology of nuclear weaponry. While he was serving on the AEC, Oppenheimer also lobbied against the bomb even after Truman approved its development.